So welcome to week 1 of the Every Bit Counts Challenge. I am currently in a cherry orchard. This belongs to a gentleman that goes to my mother's church, and he has over 100 acres, and they come through with machines and pick, and whatever isn't ripe and falls off the tree just continues to ripen. So he invited us out, and you can see just the glorious clusters that were available for us. Now, if we haven't met before, my name is Julie. I have Small Farm Living, and I have been canning and preserving food for over 30 years, and it truly is my passion. So when we were out here picking these cherries, it was really hard to stop picking. As you can see, these are 3 of those really huge metal mixing bowls, and they are all basically full of cherries. We got sweethearts, and then I can't remember what this black variety is called, but I have so many. So we are going to can some up today, both with pits and without, and I'm just giving them a wash, and I'm pulling out any that were damaged. I'm not even sure how these were damaged, but I just wanted to pull those out. And after I get them washed, these ones are going to be with pits in, so you need to prick both sides of the cherry to release any pressure so that they don't split while you are canning them. I'm making a light syrup, and I'm just stirring in the sugar to get that incorporated and get that up to a boil. And then once we do that, we are going to get our hot jars out of the oven, put on the funnel, and always put a little bit of hot liquid in the bottom of your jar, and then start loading up the cherries. Now this whole bowl I had stood and pricked all of them on each side with the toothpick, so these are all ready to go, and we're going to fill the cherries up to 1 inch of head space, and then we're going to give them a little bit of a tap just to settle and put a couple more in to get it back up to that 1 inch, and then I'm going to fill the liquid up to the 1 inch head space as well. And I don't think I showed it in this particular clip, but that little plastic chopstick that you see laying on the counter, I did go ahead and debubble after I had put the liquid up to the 1 inch of head space. And I believe I showed that later on when I show the ones that I have pitted. So that is the liquid coming up to the 1 inch of head space. Then I'm going to take the funnel off, and I'm going to wipe the rim to remove any sticky residue. It's just a paper towel with really hot water. I love to use 4 jars canning lids, and I'm going to get one on top of each of the jars that I do, and then put a ring on just finger tight so it gives a chance for any remaining air in the jar to be released during the canning process. And because these are hot, I'm going to use my jar lifter. I'm going to get them into the canner. This is my second jar. Just going to wipe the rim again on this one and get it all ready to put into the canner. And I do not have an affiliate link with 4 jars yet, but they do offer great deals and great canning lids if you are interested. So this is my All-American 921 canner. I can fit 7 quarts in there, and even though it is a pressure canner with the lid lightly set on there like that, you can use it as a water bath canner. And now I'm moving on to the ones that I actually pitted, and you need to use citric acid in some water after you pit them, and it just helps prevent browning inside the cherry and the exterior point where you have put the pitter through the cherry. Now this is a messy process. One of my least favorite things to do is pitting cherries, and if you are OCD and want your cherries to look beautiful right where the stem comes out, you can make sure you line up your cherry and get the pitter right down the center. I will tell you the truth, I did that for a little while, and after I looked back at the bowl of how many I still had to go, I just started throwing those cherries willy-nilly into that cherry pitter and slamming those pits out as fast as I could. Your hand gets really tired, really stained, and it's just kind of a repetitious task. But here are the cherries that were done with pits in after they came out of the canner. And I kind of moved over to pitting them into a plastic bag, and I will show you in a little clip why coming up, but it just makes such a mess. So I'm just kind of going to repeat the same process, but since they are soaking in the citric acid, I just need to strain all of that liquid off of them before I put them into the jar so that I don't have that liquid, and I can then use the hot liquid with the light syrup. And I have to say, time saving wise, I prefer to can them with the pits in, but once they're canned, it's so much easier to have them pitted. So I just did it both ways this time because I had way too many cherries. So I'm just going to repeat the same process. Get the liquid up to the 1 inch of head space, debubble it. Yeah, so you can see in this one I'm debubbling, and you can see those bubbles coming up to the surface. And there is a cherry pit floating right there. Yep, it's so hard to get all of the pits, but I got it out, and wiping the rim, putting the lid on and the ring again, and we are just going to load up this second canner batch with another 7 quarts. And this is what my countertop and everything surrounding it looked like. It was even on my iPad and iPad stand. It was quite a mess. Pitted a whole bunch more cherries, and then I'm taking my kitchen shears and I'm just cutting them in half, and that is because I make a cherry cobbler, and our family isn't super huge on eating a whole bunch of baked sweets, but we do like a little bit once in a while. So I'm just going to cut these all in half, and it makes really nice, when you have firm cherries I should say, it makes really nice halves. And I needed 6 cups of cherries for this recipe, so I'm getting those all dumped into the bowl. And then I needed 2 to 4 tablespoons of sugar. Now these cherries were pretty sweet, and I did use 3, and it was sweet enough. And you're going to use 1 tablespoon of freshly squeezed lemon juice. I like to keep some freshly squeezed in the refrigerator at all times, especially this time of year. Then you're going to use 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract, a 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract. And this stuff is pretty potent, so I was trying to be very careful when I was measuring it out. Didn't want to get too much. And then 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. And at the end of the video, I'll tell you a little bit more about the flour and how I probably would have used more. But I'm just going to mix this all together so that it is incorporated, and let those sugars start working on releasing some of the juices into the cherries. And for the topping, we're going to use 2/3 cup of granulated sugar, 3/4 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Now this is salted butter. The recipe calls for unsalted butter, 6 tablespoons melted. And if you are going to be using salted butter, because that's all I had, you just reduce the amount of salt that your recipe calls for in half. So I'm just going to mix the butter until it's all incorporated, and I'm going to set that aside. And then I'm going to take a 1/4 teaspoon of my pure vanilla extract, and I'm going to mix that into the butter. And I just like to do it this way so that I can mix all of the flavors together and not have the flour absorb it all right off the bat. Then we're going to add another 1/2 teaspoon of almond extract. I'm going to mix that all together. So I'm going to just kind of get everything that I put in the flour mixture incorporated, then pour the butter in. And then we're going to take the fork and we're going to start mixing this, and you want it to resemble kind of like a very, very good crumble. And you'll see as it all starts coming together here towards the end that it is very crumbly. On the cherries, now that they have sat for a little while, I am going to see how much liquid is in there. I'm going to just pour these all into the bowl after I get yet another pit out of the bowl. And then we are going to kind of just evenly spread them around the whole base of the pan. And then after I get them spread out into all the corners, I just kind of like to tamp the top of it down a little bit just so no cherries are sticking up, so that when I put the crumble on, it basically makes a layer over the whole top. Now this is what it looks like, and just to be safe in the beginning, I was just kind of sprinkling it around the edges. It's kind of one of those things where when you make it, it almost looks like there isn't going to be enough, and then lo and behold, yep. I always kind of say it's like when you go out and look for a Christmas tree in the woods. It looks very small out there, but once you get it in the house, it's huge. That's how I always feel sometimes about when I'm making something like a topping. It doesn't look like there's very much, but once you get it put onto the dish, it is just enough. So I'm going to spread this out to all the corners, get it as evenly spread as I can. And then we have already preheated our oven to 350 degrees, but I always like to cook it on a baking sheet in case anything bubbles up and over or it catches on the cookie sheet. We let this cook for about 20 minutes. This is how it looked when it came out, and when we first tried it, it had a bit of a crunchy texture. And see all the liquid there? I think I would have added more flour. It was just very runny. But I'm going to get this packaged up into individual containers and put in the freezer, and we will save it for a later date. So thanks for hanging out with me today. I will see you next time.